Hello and welcome back to Fujitsu Forum TV, where we continue to bring you live and exclusive coverage from Media Day ahead of Fujitsu Forum opening its doors at 9 AM tomorrow morning. There's still lots of work happening to get the venue ready. So if you hear public address banging, even some music playing, it's because there's a lot of preparation going into getting the venue fit for the 12,500 business leaders flying from more than 80 countries around the globe who walk through those doors tomorrow morning. Now, media are here today to understand the key business and societal challenges that are being addressed by technology and innovation. We're going to start with societal. With me is David Gentle, Director of Strategy and Foresight. For the benefit of the people who aren't here in Munich and downstairs, can you tell us about Fujitsu City and why we believe that it can solve a whole host of societal challenges?
Yeah, sure. So it's very interesting, actually. It's something that's sort of come much more directly into the language of technology. It's the ability of digital technology to influence not just your customers, but for wider society. And I mean, one thing I find really interesting is the fact that a lot of the digital services that we've seen come out in the last sort of five years or so are around tackling structural waste. So structural waste being, for instance, the fact that cars spend most of their time idle. I think cars are only actually driven for sort of around 7% of the time, and of that they're not, you know, they're not massively occupied. So if you kind of look at that, there's a huge amount of potential sort of structural waste there that you can build services around. So we've seen things like car sharing services that have kind of started to kind of tackle some of that. Cities, for instance, 50% of city space is given over to infrastructure, and we see all that sort of structural waste all over the place. So office occupancy, another good example. Food production, 30% of food production goes to waste. So these are all areas that probably 10 years ago we weren't really sort of thinking to address, but with digital technology and digital solutions we can actually start to do that. Now at Fujitsu we believe passionately in this concept of digital arenas. So this is the idea that we're seeing industries, our traditional industries, starting to kind of blur and coalesce, linked by data and linked by digital services. So we think this is now, you know, businesses should no longer think about a specific industry, but think about, you know, how can they create an ecosystem, how can they work with other organizations to build these sort of bigger services, if you like, that are oriented more around people. And so we think this is a big change in kind of the economic landscape, if you like, and this is why, for instance, our Fujitsu City is kind of central to our message here at Forum.
I don't think there's a single boardroom out there that would argue against the need for digital transformation, but I think it's fair to say still a lot of companies that are struggling to even get on the journey. Why do you think that is?
So I think it's a really good question, and actually, you know, if you'd asked me that a year ago at Forum, we'd done some research ahead of the event, which found that actually organisations were really struggling to execute on digital. You know, they all bought into the concept of digital, but they were kind of really finding it hard actually to respond and be able to kind of to really action it. Since then, I think we've sort of found out a little bit more, and we think that that really it's about being able to orientate around people. You know, I think a lot of organisations are sort of seduced by digital, or they focus on the technology. You know, we need to do some AI, we need to do some cloud, we need to do some IoT, without really thinking about, you know, what it is that the technology is there to do. And I think, you know, if organisations can focus more on actually, you know, what's the technology there? Why are we digitalising? What are we going to do in terms of, say, creating value for our customers, empowering our employees? Then I think that's when organisations can really march ahead with digital. And I think, you know, a lot of that actually means a change of mindset. You know, it's about thinking perhaps a bit more wider around sort of how you're using technology, what skills your people have, and quite often it takes leadership and it requires innovation around, you know, maybe even sort of forgetting some of the assumptions or challenging some of the assumptions that your business is based on. Really kind of getting to some quite sort of fundamental issues like that.
It's quite clear data's got a key role to play, particularly if a business is to go and unlock its potential. I think you made a really salient point, understanding the technology that is going to impact. I think there's a lot of business leaders watching this that will be asking, well, what are the technologies that's going to impact my data, and what should I be looking at? If chief officers watching this, what's going to be on their radar over the next few years?
So, again, that's a really interesting question. And I think it's very easy to kind of be caught up in hype around a particular technology or set of technologies, and clearly there have been some very big technologies that we've been, have been the kind of the mega trends over the last few years. Certainly artificial intelligence is really big at the moment, and I would say that the significant thing about artificial intelligence is its ability to give us access to different sorts of data, data that perhaps wasn't so accessible in the past. For instance, things like images and sounds and moving pictures and so on. So AI is opening up new possibilities for examining new sorts of data, and that's giving us kind of tremendous opportunities. But I think it's very easy to get seduced by a particular technology. What we think at Fujitsu is actually that it's really the coming together of a whole set of technologies is where people need to focus. So for instance, Internet of Things technologies, fantastic technologies for providing data. We have a customer CIO I was talking to recently who he said it's impossible to separate IoT and AI, because IoT creates the data and AI analyzes the data. Likewise, security technology is becoming so important. If you're in healthcare, if you're in financial services, you can't even start with data unless you can be sure that it's secured and you're not sort of creating issues around privacy and so on. And things like cloud technologies, the underlying technologies that allow you to sort of connect and bring things together. So it's perhaps not so much about focusing on one technology. It's more around, what does the end-to-end story look like, and how do the technologies link up? That's what's most important.
David's reference to security then, if that's just sort of turned your head, the back end of day 2, we actually closed Fujitsu Forum on a security interview. Some stats that were shared with me off camera earlier. Within 2 years, 20 billion IoT devices are going to be connected. 80% of our data will be going through the cloud. Here's the kicker, $600 billion is lost to cybercrime. So given your points and the importance of it over the coming years, you probably want to tune in for that one. Let's talk UN Sustainability Development Goals, because I know within Fujitsu Vision, the focus on human needs is key. Why does this mean so much to Fujitsu, and why should other organisations be following suit with the philosophies that you're adopting?
Yeah, so I mean, on that one, to begin with, it's been sort of part of our culture really at Fujitsu for some time. I think being an Asian-oriented company, I think we naturally have an inclination towards thinking around society. However, I would say that has been greatly accelerated in the last few years by simply the changes that we've seen around new technology and the way that the world is changing and the disruption that we're seeing. So I think there's a couple of sides to this. I mean, one is just simply the power of technology, and the power of technology to impact the world. Last year, 2017, we hit a milestone where something like 70% of the adult population of the world now has a smartphone. So now is digitally connected. And you think of the power of, say, an organisation like Facebook to with 2.5 billion subscribers, 2.5 billion users. The thought of being able to kind of access that number of people with a single message, even five years ago would have been incredible. And yet this is the world we live in. So there's tremendous, there's tremendous power of technology, both for ill and for opportunities as well. I think the second side of it is that increasingly you see that successful organisations today are organisations that have a kind of entrepreneurial sort of thing about them, and they have a clear goal and a clear vision. And I think vision is becoming really important in a world that's really disrupted, really chaotic, and you can't rely on your past and your heritage so much. And what really matters is to have a focus on the future. So I think that's the sort of a bit of a rationale for it, to bring in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, these are really good model you can use to help actually think about, well, what is a good outcome? What are the sorts of outcomes should we as an organisation be thinking about? And certainly at Fujitsu, it's something that we've adopted, and we're now starting to align what we do against these goals. And we think it's a very good anchor point, if you like, for organisations to consider their strategy and their future.
Final question. We started Fujitsu City looking at societal impact. I'm really interested to know how can organisations sort of balance the power of, potential employees, customers and society? I mean, it's got to be a bit of a headache for any business leader or any government, has it not? I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. So again, it comes back to the changes we've seen around digital. Now, clearly, organisations have always been very focused on their customers, but now we're seeing actually some important changes need to happen around the organisation's relationship with employees, both in terms of how they bring in new skills into the organisation, but also what's the relationship of employees with new technologies? How can you get your employees to really take advantage of, say, the power of things like AI? It means kind of new ways of working, new ways of thinking about the way a business is structured, and finally, we see, I think more than ever, the importance of trust for organisations is vital, and organisations need to really carefully think about their reputation in a world that's sort of changing so radically. So we think that really the way to bring that all together is in co-creation. So around how you can kind of bring people together, not just your own employees, but people from external organisations, your customers, and actually use the power of digital and the connectivity of digital and the power of data to collaborate, to drive innovation, to drive these more sort of human-centric services that we think people are looking for. So in a nutshell, really, that is why the theme of our event today is digital co-creation for success.
I couldn't have ended it better myself, David. Thank you so much for your time. I dare say this one could have got a lot of attention. If David's points have really triggered with your organisation, do get in contact. We can facilitate an introduction if there's some questions you'd like to put to David. Media Day is today at Fujitsu Forum, ahead of the doors opening at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. We're going to continue to bring you live and exclusive footage across Fujitsu Forum TV. The mission is to surface not just societal challenges like David's highlighted, but also business challenges. One of the biggest business challenges happening right now is taking place in retail, an industry divided by two stories. On one hand, the overachievement of Amazon, a huge success story as a business model, but that's against the backdrop of failing high streets. Up next, we're talking to CTO of Retail and Hospitality, Glenn Koskela. He's got some interesting views on a theme behind the failed retailers. He also believes that retailers cannot just combat the issues, but they can thrive on the high street. That one's next. What time are we? Be about 16 minutes time. So hopefully you can join us at 3 o'clock for that one. Plenty more to come from Media Day at Fujitsu Forum. Thanks for watching.